Hello everyone, let's take a look at this problem, the next palindrome from SPOJ. In this problem we are given a positive integer which has up to 10 raised to the power 6 digits, and we have to find the palindrome which is just greater than the given input. Although there can be many palindromes which are greater than the input, we have to find the immediate next one. Now let's take a look at how we are going to solve the problem. So we are going to take two pointers, one from the start of the string and one from the end of the string, and we'll compare both of them, and we'll traverse inwards. So for example, we have this string 2 3 4 5 6 3 2. First of all, we'll compare the first and the last position, and after that we'll compare the inner position, that is 3 and 3, and so on. Now there can be three cases. The first one is that the character at first position is equal to the character at second position, or the first position can be greater than the second position, or it can be less than the second position. Now to iterate one more time, we have to find the immediate next palindrome to the given string. Now let's consider a string that is 2 3 4, and consider that there is a black box, so we don't know what is inside that. So how are we going to approach this problem? We are going to traverse inwards. So first of all, we'll compare 2 and 2. Now this is the first case, that is equal. So in this case we don't need to do anything, we just traverse inwards. So now we come to the second position, we compare it with the 2. So 3 and 2, so the first position is greater than the second position. So in this case, what do we need to do? So we can actually find the next palindrome by just increasing this 2 to 3. Now let's consider the next position, which is 4 and 5. This is the case 3, that is first position is less than the second position. The obvious solution that comes to mind is increasing this 4 to 5 to give us the next palindrome. However, that might not give us the correct result, because in further iterations it might happen that this inner string get its value increased. So if its value increases, we can actually decrease this 5 to 4 to give us the next palindrome. Or it might happen that the inner string's value remains the same. So in that case we will try to increase the inner string's value to the next palindrome, and then decrease this 5 to 4 again. Take a look at the code. So first of all, we take the input for the palindrome string, and then we pass it to a function process. So what this process function does is that it simply calls to this function convert to next palindrome with our string and the starting and ending indexes. Now let's take a look at what this function does. So this function first of all initially checks for the base condition, that is if st is greater than or equal to en, return false. This false signifies that the string has not increased in its value, or you can say that it is a palindrome. Now for the first case that we discussed is that if the first position and last position are equal, or the values at both positions are equal, then we just return the value that the inner substring returns us. So we call the same function with inner indexes. Now for the case 2 that we discussed is that if first value is greater than the second value, we actually increase the second value to the first one, and then we similarly call the same function with inner values or the inner substring. The third case is when the first value is lesser than the second value. In that case, first of all, we need to check what the inner string returns us. So if the inner string increases in its value, we actually mark the second position equal to the first position. That is, we decrease the second position to the first position because the inner string has already increased. Otherwise, there is one case, that is if starting and ending are adjacent to one another. So for example, let's take, we have a 4 and a 7 here. To get the immediate next palindrome, we need to make it a 5 and a 5, correct? So that is what we do over here. Or otherwise, as we discussed, if the inner string remains the same, then also we actually reduce the second value to the first value, and we try to increase the inner palindrome string to its next palindrome. So we make a substring over here, and then we pass it to a function for next palindrome. Now let's take a look at what this next palindrome does. It actually checks for the middle position, and if that middle position is equal to 9, it does something. Now let's see it with an example. For example, we have a 2, 9, 9 and 2. Now if we add a 1 over here, it would lead to a carry. So what we simply do is we replace all the nines until all the nines or the digits after that with a 0. So we get this, and then we continue to do this until we get a 9, because those positions will also get the same carry. So we do this, and then the position which is left is increased in its value, so 2 becomes a 3. If we had all the nines in this string, it will definitely increase in its value. So this is what we check over here, that is, we iterate from the last position until the middle position and make all of them to be 0, and we continue to do it until we find 9, because those positions will get the carry. And now if SC is less than 0, it means that all the positions were 9, so this string has actually increased in its length, so we add a +1 in the starting. Otherwise we just increase the s of st equal to s of st plus 1. And then since this string is not a palindrome anymore, we call our function convert to next palindrome with the starting and ending positions. Now this was the edge case. The simple cases are when if the length of the string is odd, we just need to increment the middle position. For example, we had 2882. Converting into next palindrome would simply be 2892. And the third case is when we have even length. So 2882, the next palindrome would be 2992. Now let's jump back to where we left in the earlier question, function. So we called next palindrome with our substring. For the case when s of st was lesser than s of en, we decreased s of en to be s of st, and we tried to make palindrome to the next palindrome. Now we store the initial length that was passed to the next palindrome function, and we take a note of what length do we get after calling that function. and if both those lengths are equal, we just copy the string that we get from there to our original string. Otherwise, we increment s of st to plus 1 and note that s of st was less than s of en, which means that s of st cannot be 9. So we just increment s of st and copy all the further positions from the substring, and we return a true, which means that the string has increased in its value. There is one more case, that is if the entire string was a palindrome, we call our next palindrome function with a string, and this is the solution for our question.